What we're watching in plain sight is that every department and agency of the Trump administration is just a political campaign arm of MAGA and Donald Trump. It's transparent. It is obvious whether the head of the Department of Justice, Pam Bondi, or the head of the Federal Communications Commission, Brendan Carr, all coming out of the Project 2025 and Heritage Foundation, all wanting to get back into power in order to implement their partisan political policies and shove them down the throat of America. And there's no independence. If they once were serious lawyers, for instance, those days are over. They have completely forfeited their right to be considered serious, independent professionals that we can trust and rely upon. Now let's focus on Brendan Carr of the FCC. Better, let's have Seth Stern with the Freedom of Press Foundation, who joins our Legal AF Court of History with Sidney Blumenthal and Sean Wilentz to talk about why they have brought a bar complaint, because Brendan Carr is a lawyer, against Brendan Carr, kind of walking through the background of all the ways that Brendan Carr has sacrificed his professional ethics in order to do Donald Trump's bidding. And we see it blown open in the settlement that was just approved between Donald Trump and Paramount about his defamation case about CBS and Kamala Harris in the 60 Minutes interview, and why that was a hostage payment in order to approve the bigger deal of selling Paramount for the Redstone family to Skydance of the Oracle Ellison family, and having Donald Trump be the broker on that and take a tremendous personal payment in return that was all facilitated by the FCC's Brendan Carr, which I guess wouldn't matter except he happens to also be a lawyer. Here's the interview. Sidney Blumenthal, Sean Wilentz, Court of History, and Seth Stern.
I've been thinking a lot about the attacks by the Trump administration on the media. It is a full-scale assault, unlike anything ever seen before, including the Nixon era. This is almost the full, efflorescence of Nixon's darkest dreams.
Oh, it's beyond anything that Nixon even contemplated, let alone that Nixon did. Well, it's part of the general attempt by the Trump regime, to disable all of those institutions in civil society that might pose any kind of threat to them. And the media obviously is right there. The Fourth Estate. I mean, and all of that. So there's a bunch of different angles about it, but there's no question that the FCC in particular has been thuggish in its retribution as far as Trump is concerned, going after his enemies. But more than that, actually trying to intimidate and corral the entire media to do Trump's bidding. That's my view of it.
Yeah, as it happens, there's a complaint that's been filed by the Freedom of the Press Foundation to the Office of Disciplinary Counsel of the District of Columbia Court of Appeals regarding Brendan Carr, who is the head of the FCC, and his various actions against media organizations. And it so happens that we have with us Seth Stern, the Director of Advocacy at the Freedom of the Press Foundation. The foundation monitors and documents virtually every press freedom violation in the U.S. and engages in advocacy to defend the public's right to know. Welcome, Seth.
Great to be here.
So this complaint was filed this July 28th to the D.C. Court of Appeals. And you must have taken some time in thinking about the basis of submitting this as a serious matter about Brendan Carr and what he's been doing in violating the D.C. rules of professional conduct.
We did. And Brendan Carr has done a lot of questionable things during his tenure as FCC chair, but to bring a disciplinary action against an attorney, first of all, they need to be quite severe. Second of all, they usually need to relate directly to the practice of law, to the court system. The attorney disciplinary commissions aren't limited to the court system, but they're much quicker to discipline attorneys when they are impacting the legal system. And there is also sort of a reluctance, understandably to some extent, to take actions that are going to be seen as partisan or political. So those were kind of the obstacles we were concerned about. But when he approved the Paramount Skydance merger 2 days after Trump tweeted or truthed that he had received Paramount's $16 million shakedown payment with $20 million in PSAs from Skydance on the way, it seemed not only justifiable to file it as a long shot, but something that might be taken seriously. We hope will be taken seriously. We hope the commission will rise to the moment, because this isn't just Brendan Carr acting in his capacity as a regulator or asserting some novel interpretation of communications law. This is, as FCC Commissioner Gomez, who dissented, said, this is Brendan Carr using his power as FCC chair to broker a settlement of a private lawsuit for his close political ally, President Trump, that we all know is in no way whatsoever justified by the facts or the law of the case. That should be, I think, right in the disciplinary commission's wheelhouse. Attorney regulators should not want attorneys turning the courtrooms into bribe launderers.
Yeah. Well, let's step back for a minute. Brendan Carr is the author of the section of Project 2025 on media and what should be done for it. So he is acting out the guidelines of the manifesto that was created by the far right as its chief commissar. And he is a close ally, by the way, of Leonard Leo, isn't he?
Yeah.
Who is the former co-chair or the co-chair of the Federalist Society. Yeah. So tell us about Brendan Carr's mission to upend the media on behalf of Donald Trump and to bend it to Trump's wishes and to basically neuter the media from actually performing its journalistic function under the First Amendment.
Right. Yeah. And there are two ways he wants to do that, I would say. One of them is deregulation and just an acceleration of media consolidation, which is obviously a pre-existing problem, but one that he would like to expedite. And unfortunately, corporate owners of some media outlets are happy enough about his deregulatory efforts that they are willing to overlook his infringement on their journalists' First Amendment rights. I saw the National Association of Broadcasters publishing statements thanking Brendan Carr for deregulation. And whether you're happen to be a fan of the deregulation efforts or not, and I don't think that they should be one, giving this man any sort of credit while he undermines the legal rights that enable your industry to exist is, to me, misguided would be a weak way to say it. The other way Brendan Carr wants to essentially neuter the media is by stripping broadcast media, at least, which the FCC regulates, the public airwaves, of its First Amendment rights to report as it sees fit. In his view, it is the FCC's business to monitor bias, and you do not necessarily want your bias monitor to be someone who wears a lapel pin of the sitting president. That seems a bit biased. And he has taken these sort of loose legal concepts like news distortion and the obligation of broadcast licensees to operate in the public interest as permission to exercise broad powers to censor speech and journalism, which he subjectively views as outside the public interest. For example, he and Donald Trump want ICE to be able to operate in secret. That's why they, wear masks and have their lawyers not file appearances with their names on them. So he has come after broadcasters that simply identified the locations where ICE was conducting operations. Really routine journalism that he just deems outside the public interest because his boss doesn't like it. Admittedly, those public interest and news distortion standards on paper are vague, but like so many other things we've come to find out in our country, that really norms and just unwritten understandings were the glue holding things together. Everyone kind of understood that those rules or those doctrines were subject to and subservient to the First Amendment. That, of course, the news distortion policy and public interest language cannot be read as broad license for regulators to shape broadcast content, because the Constitution wouldn't allow that. Those norms, those assumptions, Brendan Carr doesn't recognize them. He does recognize them. He used to say that back when he didn't control the FCC. Anytime he perceived Democrats as influencing editorial content, he would make a big fuss about it and get on his First Amendment high horse. And that's the thing about Brendan Carr. He knows better. He was once a serious person. He's a real lawyer. He's not some political hack like, Ed Martin or other people we've seen sort of pursue these frivolous, silly investigations to get on Trump's good side. Brendan Carr is a real lawyer who was once taken seriously. He knows better. Everything he's doing, he knows is illegal and unconstitutional.
Yeah, well, the thing about it is they're not going after Fox News if you're interested in, bias and distortion. And what they define as bias and distortion is what I would define as somebody who has worked in many news organizations, such as the Washington Post, under Ben Bradley when he was editor, and Catherine Graham when she was the publisher, as journalism. That's what we would call journalism. And they are engaged in an Orwellian exercise, to say the least, simply against people they define as political enemies by reporting inconvenient truths and using forms of government control. They're hardly the apostles of limited government. They are instead weaponizing government, a favorite word of theirs, weaponize, using government to intimidate and coerce. Sean, you want to...
I could jump in. Yeah. I mean, the FCC is supposed to operate in the public interest. I mean, that's the phrase that we see all the time, that there is such a thing as the public interest. And it used to be assumed the public interest was not a particular political interest, that there was something larger than a particular political interest. What's happened is that the Trump regime has conflated their interest with the public interest. It has made them the same. It's a sort of twist on, the absolutism of l'état c'est moi, I am the state, as Louis XIV said. Well, Trump is saying, I am the country, I am the nation, right? And so if you come against me, you are by definition attacking the public interest.
Yeah, well said. And you were talking about Fox News. Initially, I think Brendan Carr's excuse for not coming after Fox News was that, well, the FCC doesn't regulate cable, which is true. But then Brendan Carr came after MSNBC for not airing one of Trump's press conferences. He invented the theory that the public interest requirement means that not only broadcast licensees, but cable stations are obligated to air presidential press conferences and repeat the president's false talking points, in that case, about the immigrants who are supposedly invading us from Trinidad under the control of the Venezuelan government, which, of course, was another, this time, newspaper-based news story from the Times and Post that Trump claimed was fake news until our organization, Freedom of the Press Foundation, got the intelligence community memo that corroborated everything that the Times and Post said. Sure, Fox News is biased in all sorts of ways, and we don't need to go through the whole parade of terribles about Fox News, but they're entitled to be, and that's the thing. Even if Carr had the authority to regulate Fox News, he shouldn't, nor should he regulate MSNBC, NBC, CBS. I'm not here to say that all of the stations being punished and retaliated against by Carr are perfect or never make mistakes. The whole the whole lawsuit that resulted in the $16 million bribe was over editing of the interview with Kamala Harris. So
let's talk about that CBS case, because Brendan Carr played a key role. Could you explain the role he played in that investigation of CBS on behalf of Donald Trump, what the claims were, what happened, and what the resolution was, and what the consequences are in terms of intimidation of the press?
Yeah, so CBS on 60 Minutes during last year's presidential campaign interviewed Kamala Harris, asked her a question about the war in Gaza. She gave an answer that they edited for clarity, as they routinely do, as all news broadcasters routinely do. It aired on 60 Minutes. The show's called 60 Minutes. They don't have time to air answers in full. They edit for time. There's that little clock in the background, the whole, The claim was that the editing distorted her answers to make her sound better, and that therefore they had deceived consumers. They had interfered with the election. It obviously didn't stop Trump from asserting that claim that he won the election. Even that they had unfairly competed with Trump's own media property, Truth Social. That was one of his claims. Now, if you go back and listen to the interview answers, they're both gibberish. They're both excuses for the Biden administration's inaction in Gaza that make no sense and say absolutely nothing. They're just two different sections of a word salad answer. That being said, it is not the government's or the court's place to determine whether a news station properly edited an interview, and ask any First Amendment expert in the country, and they will tell you that.
Welcome back. Hopefully now you're either here reliably on and religiously on the Legal AF YouTube channel. Take a minute, hit that subscribe button to vote for this kind of content. That's the way we do it. If you want that kind of content, hit the free subscribe button. That helps grow our channel and keeps us on the air at this critical moment in our history. A Court of History, go over to the playlist. You'll see some amazing interviews, some amazing historical analysis. They are Sydney and Sean, our resident historians, making the Court of History the highest court in the land, and for good reason. And they bring on newsmakers and people that are out there making good trouble for you to hear from. And that was just one example. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.